Genesis chapter 4, verses 10 to 26. And the Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." Then the Lord said to him, "Not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." And the Lord put a mark on Cain, lest any who found him should attack him. Then Cain went away from the presence of the Lord and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch. When he built a city, he called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. To Enoch was born Irad, and Irad fathered Mehujael, and Mehujael fathered Methushael, and Methushael fathered Lamech. And Lamech took two wives. The name of one was Ada, and the other Zillah. Ada bore Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. His brother's name was Jubal. He was the father of all those who play the lyre and the pipe. Zillah also bore Tubal-Cain. He was the forger of all instruments of bronze and iron. The sister of Tubal-Cain was Naamah. Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, "Hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. Listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 70-fold." And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and called his name Seth. For she said, "God has appointed for me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him." To Seth also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. At that time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord.
Before we look at the passage for today, I want to just announce something very exciting. We're announcing the first banns of marriage for the wedding between Jayateja Adanki, member of Redeemer, and Indu and Jacob, member of Open Bible Fellowship, to be solemnized on 10th April 2021. If anyone has any just cause or impediment why these two should not be married should not be joined together in a marriage covenant, please declare it to us in writing. This is the first time of the reading of the banns. And for those of you who didn't recognize the name, I was talking about Joseph Teja. So Joseph and Indu are getting married, so that's exciting. All right, we're in a series in Genesis where for the past 3 weeks we've been talking about sin. And the question I had to struggle with this week is, should we talk about sin one more time? And in some ways, it's as awkward for me to talk about it as it may be difficult for you to hear about it. But it is so important to clearly understand sin. I think sometimes when Christians think about sin, we talk about it very superficially. You know, this is a sin, that is a sin. I should stop doing this. I should stop doing that. And it's all behavior management. It's all behavior control and sin management. But the way that these early chapters of the Bible are describing sin is so much deeper than that. And if you think about it, ever since this COVID situation has started, we have been more conscious about our health than ever before. Right? Anytime you sneeze, anytime you cough, anytime you get a headache, anytime you get a fever, what have I got it? Have I got it? Have I got it? And we're so conscious of these symptoms because they might reveal that we have a sickness. Now, but the truth is, there was a virus before the virus, and there are symptoms of that virus. And what a coronavirus or any other virus does to our bodies, sin does to our hearts. So sin is not just something we do. Sin is something that does something to us. And you know what a virus does to our bodies, sin does to our hearts. And we've been looking at how at the heart of the doctrine of sin, at the heart of the meaning of sin, is resistance and replacement. We resist God's mercy and we replace Him with something else. And that something else can be something good. It can be something really attractive. It can be something really useful. But it does take the place of God. And that's at the heart of sin. And today I want to kind of look at three things about sin that are revealed in this story that most of us would fly over. Even I was preparing for this sermon series, wondering, should we just stop where we stopped last week and start a new series next time and just fly over this passage, because it just seems like a flyover passage. But but what you see in here is how quickly sin accelerates, how deadly this virus is. Once it gets into the human system, once it gets into human beings, it starts to spread, and it spreads quickly, and it starts killing aggressively. And it does this quickly. And you see, it kills an individual, it kills a family, it kills a culture. It's poisoning everything. It's poisoning all these things. So we're going to see three things about this nature of sin. We're going to see its deceit, we're going to see its conceit, and we're going to see its defeat. Its deceit, its conceit, and its defeat. So first of all, let's look at its deceit. In verse 10 onwards, the writer of Genesis tells us about this conversation that's been happening between God and Cain. So Cain has just murdered his brother, and that we looked at that last week. And this is a courtroom scene, but God makes it feel like a counselor's room, because he's asking questions, he's probing, and he's got having this conversation with Cain. And look what he says. The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is more than what I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." But the Lord said to him, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him. So Cain went out from the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. Now, just a second. Sorry, I have to get something. All right. So now the first thing I want us to look at two things in this conversation between God and Cain. I want us to look at what God says, and I want us to look at what Cain says. So it's in the 21st century, people are very uncomfortable with a God who judges. Very uncomfortable, especially in urban areas. Very uncomfortable with the God who judges. Very uncomfortable with the word judgment. And at the same time, people in the 21st century in urban cities care very much about justice. So the big question we have to ask is, how do you get justice without judgment? How do you get justice without judgment? How do you pursue justice without assuming that there's somebody who can judge? And God is someone who cares about justice so much. He's not afraid to judge. He won't hold back from judging. See, and we're very confused about this word judgment. Right? Judgment, the judgments that the Bible is very comfortable with is when it says to someone, "What have you done?" Just like God says, "What have you done? This is not right. This is wrong. It's bad for you. It's going to kill you. I care about you. I love you. I don't want you to get poisoned by this thing. It's wrong." The judgments that the Bible is uncomfortable with and condemns is when you say to someone, "What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" There's a big difference between when you say to someone, "What you've done is wrong," and when you say to someone, "What's wrong with you?" That's the kind of judgment the Bible has no place for. No place for. But the kind of judgment that God demonstrates and desires His people to have the courage to do, to love someone enough, to love someone so much, to care about justice so much, that you take the risk and you say it. And you judge. You ask these tough questions. You can't get justice without judgment. You can't get it. You can't get justice without judgment. So, but I want you to think a little bit more about what Cain says, because here is sin at work. Here is sin doing what sin does, poisoning, hardening the heart, deceiving the mind. And look what Cain says. So Cain is receiving judgment. And we looked last week at how Cain is resisting repentance. He's resisting responsibility, just like his parents, Adam and Eve. So this family pattern continues. And here is Cain. And here's what he says. He says, my punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. Listen to this. Just listen to how many times he says I and my. Look at that. He says, my punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. 7 times he says I or me. I don't know if there's any significance to that number. 7 is a significant number in the Bible. I don't know if there's any significance to it. But one thing is for certain, Cain can only think about himself. Cain is only conscious about what's going to happen to him. This is sin turning a person inward and making them self-centered. So that's at the heart of sin. Resistance and replacement. You resist God and you replace him with something else. And in this case, Cain has replaced God with himself. See, the shocking thing to understand is Cain is not at all conscious of the fact that he's talking to God and he has killed his brother. He's not concerned about what that might do to God, that someone that God loved, someone that God cared about has been murdered. He's not concerned about what it might do to his family. He's not concerned. His primary concern is, this is too much for me. This is not fair. Things are going to get worse for me. It's all about it's all about him. That's what sin does. And Hebrews gives us this warning, about the nature of sin. And look at what it says in Hebrews 3:10-14. It says, that is why I was angry with that generation. I said, their hearts are always going astray, and they have not known my ways. And here God says in verse 11, so I declare on oath in my anger, they shall never enter my rest. And here's what he says, see to it, brothers and sisters, that none of you has a sinful, unbelieving heart that turns away from the living God, but encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. We have come to share in Christ if indeed we hold our original conviction firmly to the very end. I want you to think about this, because here is the writer of the Hebrews warning Christians, brothers and sisters. So there's a part of us that might think, okay, I'm not like Cain, right? I haven't killed anyone, I haven't murdered anyone. I'm not gonna do that. But here's what the warning is to Christians. The warning is to people who call themselves Christian. Then it says that none of you has a sinful, unbelieving heart. And what does the sinful, unbelieving heart do? It turns away from the living God. It resists and replaces. When you turn away from something, you turn to something else. You resist and replace. And look, and it says, and when you turn away from God, you turn away from God's people. And but here's what it says, verse 13. But encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. See, when you feel wronged by someone, and when you feel that something's wrong with you, your heart gets hard and you turn away. You turn away. That's the natural tendency to turn away. And one thing that Christianity desperately needs to be rescued from is individualism. It desperately needs to be rescued from individualism. It needs to be rescued from tribalism, we know that, but it needs to be rescued from individualism. And too much of Christianity today sounds very spiritual, but is deeply individualistic. When you talk to somebody about a decision they've made that you think isn't right, and they say, I've prayed about it. I've prayed about it. The deal is done. I've prayed about it. It's almost as if God has communicated to this person, listen, this is between you and me. I understand you, you understand me. This is between us. If anybody else asks you, you just tell them you spoke to me. That sounds like something an abusive person would say. This is between you and me. Don't tell anybody else about it. It's for us. We understand each other. We don't need to talk about this with them. We don't need anybody else talking about this. God does not abuse his people. And individual and Christianity desperately needs to be rescued from individualism that turns away from God and replaces him with a pseudo spirituality that has no room for other people. And Christianity desperately needs to be rescued from that. And Cain is this is what's up with Cain. He's totally unconscious of other people and what he's done to them. He's totally unconscious of God and what he's doing for him. He's completely consumed with himself. I, me. In Cain's warped reality, he cannot look at anything without reference to himself, without thinking about how is this going to affect me? How is this going to change my life? What's it going to be like for me? And this is at the heart of what this is what sin does. It's deceit. Its deceit is to it hardens our heart, it deceives us, and it makes us think that we are at the center of the universe while at the same time holding out some kind of spirituality. Remember, Hebrews, the writer is writing this to Christians. You can be deceived. James also tells us that we can deceive ourselves. But look at the antidote that we have here. And the antidote, it's the antidote that Cain resists, and it's the antidote that we are warned not to resist. So the thing about Christians is that when it comes to sin, is that we are excellent doctors, but we're terrible patients. Right? I mean, if I asked you what is the greatest problem in our country, the greatest problem in our society, the greatest problem in your family, the greatest problem in your relationships, the greatest problem, in most cases it would be someone else, right? It's very rare that we would say, no, I'm what's wrong with the country, I'm what's wrong with the nation, I'm what's wrong with the family. It's we're very good doctors, but we're not very good patients. We don't see it in ourselves. We're very happy to treat other people, not very happy to receive treatment. And like I said last week, we all want a cure, but we don't want treatment. And God in this conversation is treating Cain. It's a difficult conversation. He's asking tough questions and he's saying tough things, things that are hard to hear. But look at what the writer of Hebrews tells us. He says, but encourage one another daily, as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. The antidote to the deceitfulness of sin that the Bible gives us is a daily reminder and encouragement from other people of the gospel. Daily. We need this daily. If there was a virus in you that could kill you physically, and a doctor told you, here's a pill, I want you to have this daily. Because if you don't have it daily, if you skip one day, you're going to die. How many days do you think you would skip that pill? Because your life depends on it. See, the problem with us in the world today is we are far more concerned about our bodies than we are about our hearts. We're far more concerned about our bodies than we are about our hearts. You know, I've grown up in a family with a history of mental illness. My mother has had a mental illness since I was born. I've grown up with it. I've seen her in all kinds of states. Her extended family, brothers and sisters, mental illness everywhere. So much so that during my teenage years, when I was going through chaos, I genuinely wondered, do I have mental health issues? Do I need medication? Do I need this? And I want you to think about this from what I've seen in my life. Do you know what happens to my mother when she misses her medication? Do you know what goes wrong? That sin is deceitful. It wants to kill you. It wants to destroy you. It wants to destroy your family. It wants to destroy your mental health. It wants to destroy your physical health. It wants to destroy everything about you. It doesn't care about you. It doesn't love you. It has no kindness towards you. It doesn't see you as a human being. It sees you as an enemy. It wants to kill you. And the antidote we're given is other people encouraging us daily. With what? With what? With this original conviction that Christ is our righteousness. The thing about sin is that we can't undeceive ourselves. So if we're deceived by sin, if we're deceived in anything, the nature of deception is that we don't know we're deceived. Someone else has to undeceive us. Someone else has to do it. And this is why Christianity desperately needs to be rescued from individualism, because we are turning into a community of people performing brain surgery on ourselves. We can't live that way. Can't live that way. So this is the deceit of sin. But the second thing you're going to see in this passage is its conceit. Is what it does to the heart, and its self-seeking and the arrogance. So look at what happens to families. So Cain lives on, and he has children, and he has families, and there's two questions I don't have time to answer in this sermon, right? Who was Cain's wife, and where did all these other people come from? Right? Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel. Suddenly, there's all these other people, and he has wives and kids. Stay back for the Q&A if you want an answer to that question. But like the writer of Genesis, I'm going to be more focused on the meaning of the passage than the mechanism of creation, because this is biblical writing is theological writing. It's not to give us information. It's to give us the thing that we need to hear about God, the thing that we need to hear about ourselves, that can save us from this virus, that can save us from this sin. So you're going to see its conceit in two ways. Sin begins to disrupt the family, and it begins to disrupt culture. It begins to disrupt families. It begins to disrupt culture. You're going to see the first polygamous family. Right? The polygamy begins here, and it runs rampant throughout the Old Testament. And this is what, if anyone's skeptical of the Bible, the first thing they're going to say, one of the first things they're going to say is, oh, so much polygamy, so much chaos. This is exactly what's wrong with the Bible. And there's two things. I mentioned this in a Q&A some time ago, but I'm going to mention it again. Polygamy is multiple marriages with everyone's consent. Polygamy is multiple marriages with everyone's consent, and it's driven by a desire for descendants. And there's descendants because if you have more wives, you can have more children. Right? If you have more children, then you have more people who are working with you. That means you have more prosperity and you have more protection. So more money and more safety. And in the ancient world, that's what mattered. You needed security, emotional, you needed economic security and physical security. And a larger family, a larger tribe provided you with that. So polygamy was the means by which people chose this. And you see the fall here. You see the fall. See, at the heart of the fall, remember a couple of weeks we talked about this. In the fall, Adam and Eve are saying to God, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. And what people say in polygamy is, you're not good enough to provide me with protection physically or economic prosperity. I have to do it by myself. So I'm going to get another wife, and another wife, and another wife, and another wife. And throughout the Bible, you will see the chaos of polygamous families. Because, in Indian education, you don't think, that you're told what to do. You're told what to write. Remember one class, a history class, it was the easiest class for me in the whole day, because the teacher would come in, she would sit down, and she would tell us to open our books and our pens, and she would say, write what I'm saying. And we would just sit and thoughtlessly write. The Bible doesn't work like that. The Bible invites you to think. It says, come, look at polygamy. Look at this. Does it work? Do you think it's a good thing? What's going on here? Because at the heart of polygamy is the desire to get something by ourselves without reference to God. Now, in the 21st century, you don't see polygamy, but you know what you do see? You see polyamory. You see polyamory in the 21st century. And polyamory is multiple romantic sexual relationships with everyone's consent. Everyone's consent. And it's driven by a desire for pleasure, personal fulfillment, and gratification. Personal. So I want to find love. I want to find satisfaction. I'm going to find it this way because God is not good enough. His way is not good enough. I need to go out and I find it, and I need to find it myself in my way. So I will resist God's ways and I will replace it with something else. God is not good enough. Polygamy and polyamory both are fruits of the same tree. And they go down to that single root that says God is not good enough. I will find my own, I will find what I want my way. And it destroys communities, and it destroys families. So, but the second thing you're going to see is how sin begins to disrupt culture and cities. So it's beautiful. There's the thing about cities in the Bible is that this is the first mention of cities in the Bible, and you'll see two things happen. You'll see this rapid rise in creativity, and at the same time, you'll see this rapid decline in morality. A rapid rise in creativity and a rapid decline in morality. So you'll see the beginnings of tents with livestock. So there's animal husbandry. You're going to see the beginning of music, the father of all those who play the lyre and pipe. You're going to see Tubal Cain, the forger of instruments of bronze and iron. So you're going to see these tools. And so technology is thriving, arts are thriving, uh, and cattle herding and all this stuff is thriving. The economy is thriving. Cities are forming, right? So there's a rapid rise in creativity and a rapid decline in morality, and it's captured in a story. In a story, you see this. You see Lamech, and he says he comes back to his two wives, and he says it says in verse 23, Lamech said to his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. A very humble man here, right? Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, you wives of Lamech. He's reminding them whose wives they are. You wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me. He's bragging about killing a young boy. Literally, it means a young boy. And the word wounding sounds like he slighted me, he offended me, he hurt me. He hurt my feelings. So in the 21st century, if you're offended, you cancel someone. In the ancient world, if you were offended by someone, you kill them. Same thing. And it says if Cain's revenge is sevenfold, then Lamech's is 77-fold. And what that literally translates is, I will never forgive, I will always be angry. Anyone who offends me, anyone who hurts me, anyone who slights me, I'll do the same thing to them over and over and over again. I will always be angry, I will never forgive. And this is not far away from New Delhi. We live in a city of Cains and Lamechs. A couple of years ago, there was a car driving through the Gurgaon toll plaza. And there was a young man in the toll booth who wanted some proof from the driver. The driver was drunk. He took out his gun and he shot him. That's Lamech. That's Lamech. And that man could very well have gone home and bragged to his wife. Because cities are seeing rapid rise in creativity, in the arts, in technology, in also in the economy, and they're seeing rapid decline in morality. And there's a book by Rana Das Gupta called Capital, in which he talks about this. Yeah, and his basic assumption is that the soul of the city is being lost to the goals of the city. The soul of the city is being lost to the goals of the city. The city wants so much, and it doesn't know what it's losing to get it. That's what sin does. It destroys the individual, destroys the families, and then goes for the culture. And it's insidious. It's an insidious parasite, resisting God, replacing him with something else constantly, over and over again. And I don't want to paint a completely despairing picture of this, but let me just give you one last thing to think about this before we go to something hopeful and respond to what do we do about this? What do we what's the appropriate, what role does the church play in all this? So let me read to you a verse from 1 John that kind of gives us a warning, and then we can move on to think about something beyond that. So here is okay, 1 John chapter 3, verse 11 onwards. For this is the message that you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. This is the message you have heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. Verse 12. We should not be like Cain, who was of the evil one and murdered his brother. And why did he murder him? Because his own deeds were evil, and his brothers were righteous. Do not be surprised, brothers, that the world hates you. We know that we have passed out of death into life because we love the brothers, because we love the family of the church. Whoever does not whoever does not love abides in death. Whoever does not love lives in death. Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer. Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer. And you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. This is crucial. This is a stern warning for the church. Do not be like Cain. If you hate your brother, if you hate someone in this church, if you hate someone who belongs to the body of Christ, not that it's okay to hate those outside, but particularly so in the body of Christ. If you hate someone in the body of Christ, you're a murderer. And this is what sin does. First it kills you, then it turns you into a killer. It kills you, and then it turns you into a killer. It's destroying. It's insidious. Now, I want us to think about what this means for the church, because you see in this passage, you'll see an emphasis on names, right? You'll see this. There's a lot of names being named, and there's twice in the passage where you'll see at the end of the passage, you'll see I'm sorry, I haven't written it down in my notes. Let me just open the Bible. You'll see this in Genesis chapter 3 at the end, verse 26. To Seth also a son was born, and he called his name Enosh. At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. What's at the heart of the soul of the city that's going wrong is that human beings are living for their own glory. But here in verse 26, you have this beginning of a people who are calling on the name of the Lord, and they're not living for their own glory, they're living for the glory of God. You know, in football, whenever you have a team that's attacking on goal, like there's an opportunity for a goal scorer, and he has a choice to make. He either passes the ball to somebody else, or he'll take the shot himself from an unlikely position, and the commentator will say, oh, he decided to go for glory. He decided to go for glory. See, in a football game, you don't play the pass that gets the glory. You play the pass that gets the goal. You play the pass to win the game. You don't play the pass to get glory. And the city is full of glory seekers and glory hunters. Everyone trying to build their own name, make a name for themselves. Just get better and better at that. And that's the danger. And what it's describing here is a people who live not for their own name, but for the name of the Lord. And in Hebrews, again, you get this picture where it says, for here we have no lasting city, but we seek the city that is to come. Through him, let us continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God, that is the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. Do not neglect to do good and to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Think about this. Such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Just like Abel. His sacrifice was pleasing to God. And such sacrifices are pleasing to God. And let me give you a picture of this for from us. For recently, just this morning, I read the resignation letter of Pratap Bhanu Mehta, who's resigned from Ashoka University. And in the resignation letter, he quotes George Eliot. And he says, "The right to rebellion is the right to seek a higher rule and not to wander in mere lawlessness." The right to rebellion is the right to seek a higher rule and not to wander in mere lawlessness like Cain. You see, and the problem with Cain and with us is not that we are rebellious. It's that we're not rebellious enough. We're not rebellious enough to seek a higher rule. And the church is called to be a city inside the city, a counter city, an alternate city, a different city. It's meant to be the city of God on display. You know, like uh, it's meant to be a prototype of the new creation. That's what the church is, a prototype of the new creation. It's the thing that's going to come. And if you want to see what's going to come, what's going to happen, come into the church. But look what we've become. So the call to the church is that if we're going to be the city that the city needs, if we're going to be that counter city, if we're going to be that alternate city, it has to be with this desire to seek the city that is to come, so that through him we continually offer up a sacrifice of praise to God, the fruit of lips that acknowledge his name. We live for his glory, not our own, and we do not neglect to do good and to share what we have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Finally, let's close with this. It's defeat. Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is more than I can bear. And today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." Now, you've got to ask, and then later on in the early in the passage, the Lord said to him, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain so that no one who found him would kill him. There's a lot of talk about what this mark is and what this mark means, but we know what its function is. Its function is to serve as a reminder of God's judgment and a reminder of God's mercy, because God shows Cain mercy. God does not take revenge. He seeks justice. And he preserves him. He saves him. He extends his life. But and the question for us is, how does God show mercy, and how does he do that? And before we answer the question of how, we should probably look at the way that Jesus reverses this. Because if we're going to see how our self-deception, how our self-seeking can turn into self-emptying and self-giving, we have to look at Jesus. We have to look at what he's done. And you look at Lamech. Let's look at what Lamech says and what Cain says as our starting point. So Lamech says, "Hear my words. I have killed a man for wounding me and a young man for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times." If you're familiar with the Bible, does that phrase sound familiar to you? 70 times 7? See, Jesus uses this phrase. When the disciples come to him and ask him, "How many times should I forgive my brother?" He says 70 times 7. You know what he's doing? He's reversing Lamech's anger. And he's saying to us, if Lamech shows unfailing, unrestrained anger, I will show unfailing, unrestrained forgiveness. Lamech has no right to be angry. He has no right to be angry. But God has every right to be angry. And the person who has every right to be angry is communicating to us, I will show endless mercy. I will show unrestrained mercy, unfailing love, steadfast love. He's reversing the curse of Lamech. He's reversing the lawlessness of Lamech. But how does he do it? He does it because you think about Cain and what he says. My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. You know how God can show mercy? Because everything that Cain feared would happen to him actually happened to Jesus Christ. Everything Cain feared would happen to him actually happened to Jesus Christ. Cain deserved it. Cain deserved it all. Jesus did not deserve any of it. and he took it all. So you think about the punishment. It's an overwhelming punishment. Crucifixion is the weight of the entire world's sin on his shoulders. It's the weight of sin on his shoulders. He's bearing that punishment for us. And today he's driven from the land. Yes, he's hidden from God's presence. Yes, he will be a restless wanderer on the earth. You know what Jesus said through his life? Foxes have holes, birds have nests, but the Son of Man does not have a place to lay his head. He's a fugitive on the run, hunted. They wanted to kill him the whole time. He's a fugitive on the run, restless. And whoever finds me will kill me. Oh, they found him and they killed him. Whatever happened, whatever Cain feared would happen to him happens to Jesus. And this is why we have confidence, because we are, uh, though there's this Cain like, sin like resistance and rebellion against God and replacement with something else, he draws near to us and he offers us mercy and he calls us back. And that's the hope of the gospel. That's why we need the gospel, and we need the gospel every day. We need it every day from one another. We need to preach it to ourselves. We need to preach it to one another. And we need to mitigate the power of this virus, and so that we can experience more and more of the power of the gospel. Let me close with a quick story. Many years ago, I watched The Phantom of the Opera, and The Phantom of the Opera is this musical in which there's this masked man who's haunting a musical theater, and the final scene is where in the final stages, there's this woman who takes off his mask and kisses him. She embraces him. And that experience of embrace, that experience of acceptance, that experience of being received uh, does something to him, and he disappears, and he doesn't haunt the hall anymore, doesn't haunt the theater anymore. And in a way, it's a picture of the gospel. When we were covered up, when we were hiding in our sin and covering our shame and all, and haunting ourselves, haunting other people, being like Cain, Jesus comes to us and he uncovers our marks and he covers us with his righteousness. He covers us with his divine favor. And that gives us the freedom to go out into the world. Not run away, but turn back to God, turn to one another, and be the city in the city that the city needs. And that's my prayer for us as a church, that we'll be the city in the city that the city needs.